Lesson 3, how to create an unbeatable mindset. Video 4, learn and grow continuously. How to learn and grow. Learning new skills throughout one's life. This idea of continuous learning, it's a vital aspect to a growth mindset and for a growth mindset. And it's characterized by a persistent pursuit of knowledge and skills throughout one's life. And I believe it's fueled by curiosity, not necessarily this, insatiable desire for information, because I don't think they're the same. I think you can be curious. It can also be someone who's hungry for information. Because look, I think I possess both of those things. But information in and of itself is kind of pointless, because you kind of just become this know-it-all who knows a little bit about a lot of things. But when you're curious, the curiosity, in my way of looking at it, the curiosity kind of connects to people. So when it's fueled by curiosity, this drive in us to explore, this drive in us to question and to expand our understanding, that is, in my opinion, one way we can have an unbeatable mindset is by continuously learning and growing. This learning, I think, transcends the traditional educational type of learning in some ways, because I think that it's really about incorporating a diversity of where and how to learn. I think certainly traditional school can be part of it, but I also think that there's this learning to learn, of learning. I'll give it a quick illustration. It was years ago, but my son, he was playing baseball and he broke his ankle, and he was playing baseball, and that's all he did in the summertime. I mean, he was involved in other sports, but he had an entire summer planned and full of playing baseball. And so when he broke his ankle, he couldn't really do much. He had a cast on his foot, on his ankle, so he really couldn't go. We live where we live. We live not far from the beach. He really couldn't go to the beach. He couldn't get it wet. So there wasn't a lot that he could do. I mean, he couldn't ride a bike, couldn't skate, and he was at that age where he still did those things sometimes. But what he ended up doing, which I was very proud of him for doing, I had this old guitar that I bought years and years ago. I bought the guitar for $50. And it wasn't a bad guitar. It was a good beginner's guitar. And he asked if he could get it restrung. And I said, sure. And just so happened, a good friend of ours was in town that actually plays guitar. And if it weren't for my friend helping my son restring the guitar, because I mean, what I would have done, I would have taken it to a guitar shop and I would have had him restring it, and they would have restrung it, and that would have been fine. But if I would have because I've never done it before, and I learned how to play guitar a little bit, but I've never ever changed the strings of a guitar. So the bottom line is that my son taught himself how to play guitar in that summer. So I think that there's this aspect of having an unbeatable mindset. It is very much connected to learning to grow, but also learning to learn. And where my son learned how to play guitar was YouTube. And I think you can teach yourself almost anything from finding videos on how to learn the thing you're wanting to learn online. It doesn't have to be YouTube. There are, multiple places to go online, but YouTube is a big one. So when I say that, it can transcend, this idea of learning and growing can transcend the traditional kind of our academia. I'm not saying, because I'm someone, I have multiple degrees. So I have been a believer in academia, but I do think that today, the power of academia, I think, has lessened considerably because there's so much information online. So I think the use of technology is important in learning and growing. I'll give you another example. When my son was playing baseball, there was a lot of downtime for me or his mom, because we had to take him to practices, and his practices were hours long, and they were far away, that we couldn't just go home couldn't drop him off at practice and come home. We had to stay wherever he was practicing. So there was a lot of downtime. And that's when I learned, I mean, I already had an Audible account, but I didn't really want to spend, $50 a month on books, listening to books on Audible. So I just spent the minimum. I think it was like $14 a month, and I got two books a month off from Amazon. But the other books that I listened to were all free, and they were from this app called Libby, Libby, Libby. So what I discovered, and again, I mean, there are multiple places you can find these, but I found a way to listen to books and also happened to walk. I walked a lot, and I would walk around either the field or the practice facility where my son was practicing, and I would listen to books. I mean, I got to the point there were several years where I would listen to 2 books a week, and big books. I mean, not just short, small books, but real, several hundred pages of books. I would listen to 2 a week. So the point is that technology, I think, can also play a role in helping you learn and grow. But you have to want it. You have to be curious. You have to have this. I do think there is. And I said the word earlier. I said insatiable. I think there has to be this interest and curiosity. And for me at the time, it was very heightened in the sense of wanting to learn. And it was aspects to what I'm doing as a coach. So technology can actually play a role. It can offer accessible resources for I think, what I would call a self-paced education. But continuous learning is not just about acquiring new information. It also involves personal and professional development, where what I mean by that is similar, going back to the coaching space that my son was in, in his athletics. It was all about improvement. It was all about breaking down a skill or a technique or an ability and trying to build it up. So when you think about, it's not just continuous learning for continuous learning's sake. It's about your personal and professional development. What kind of skills do you need to have in order to have the life and career that you want? So there needs to be this awareness, this cognizance of how are your goals, your personal learning, your professional learning, how are those intertwined so that you can engage in a reflective process and practice, so that you know what's essential in order for you to focus on the right thing at the right time in order to get to that next level. So things like, time constraints, some of us kind of have a fear of failure. These can all, inhibit us or prevent us from learning and growing because we kind of want to stay safe. And again, if you're in survival mode or if you're in your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. So you're not going to learn. You're not going to, if you're reading novels, that's a different kind of reading than reading to learn, to grow, to try to change something about yourself, the way you think. But ultimately, this continuous learning, it enriches our lives to the point to where we become more adaptable, malleable, usable, and it fosters this ongoing commitment to growth. It's what we've said before. I may have shared it in previous videos, this idea of personal Kaizen, of constant continuous improvement. So how do you fuel curiosity? Because curiosity, I believe, is the engine for learning. I think you fuel curiosity by embracing the power and the profundity of the question why. Why are we here? Why this? Why that? Because curiosity is the driving force by when we ask the question why. And I was the kid. And it drove my mom and it drove my dad crazy. My mom thought it was cute, but when I was a little kid, I was the person that just never stopped with questions. Why? So to the point where my dad got tired of answering my questions, or he got tired of me asking questions. He bought me an entire set of encyclopedias. So when I was old enough to read, I think I was in probably 3rd, 4th grade, I started reading encyclopedias because I wanted to know. And again, I don't think that's necessarily cool for the information gathering part, because I just think that's kind of, in some ways it's kind of stupid, because the information is in the encyclopedia. You don't necessarily need to learn all that. But there was something about wanting to know why things work. So it wasn't like I was reading them from cover to cover. That's not how I read them. If I had a question, I would go to the encyclopedia. If I wanted to know something, I would go to the encyclopedia. It's very much how I use the internet today. And there isn't a day that goes by where I think about something, it kind of pops in my mind, and I'm kind of curious. So I find out, oh, I'll give you an example. The country of Slovenia. I was interested about the country of Slovenia and their language, and I'm thinking, why is their language so much different than their neighboring, especially their country, the countries to the west and north of them? And there's a reason for that. But they don't speak the same kind of language that they would speak like in Italy or in Austria, some of the countries that Slovenia neighbors. Well, I was able to look that up online, and that's because we have the internet. And now with AI, I can also do the same thing. I can ask AI a question, and I can get a very specific answer from AI, especially in the one I use is called Gemini on Google, which is pretty cool. The point is that you have to have this kind of in the back of your mind. Like for me, I can only describe what it's like for me. I just want to know why. Well, why is that? Why is that? You don't have to have that. But the whole point of having an unbeatable mindset is you have this commitment to learning and growing, that you're constantly, continually learning and growing. Then I think you find joy in exploring, and you find joy in the exploration, because you approach learning with a sense of adventure and a sense of wonder. It's like on Instagram, you can follow people on Instagram. It's very diverse what I'm looking at on Instagram. I can be looking at stuff in the oil and gas industry, but I can also be looking at a page that is about all these different species of birds. And I'm not even a birder. I don't have binoculars and go out looking for birds, but I just find some things interesting. So the point is that there needs to be this joy in learning and exploring, because it kind of adds to your, not just adds to your what you know, but also kind of enriches the experience. And it also expands our learning toolkit, because the more tools that we have in our toolkit that we can use, the more good we can do. But I think variety is the key to that. So you don't want to restrict yourself to a traditional, toolkit. You want to try to get as many tools as you can, because there are tools that can work cross-functionally across a lot of different places. And embrace the idea of learning from multiple places. And another source, I'm not a big listener of podcasts, but I do listen to some. I guess I'm more of a reader than I'm a listener, even though especially not books for sure. I listen to books, but when it comes to podcasts, I just don't have a lot of time for that stuff. But the point is that I think there's a lot to be said about, variety is king in this. So also you can, we talked about, is harness the power of technology. There are classes you can take online. There are entire, if it's Udemy or other kinds of sites where you can learn, you can take classes. LinkedIn has a ton of classes. There's also this thing called the Massive Open Online Course, which is even like some of the best schools in the world have actually put their courses on this, so it's open. Anyone can take these courses, and you sharpen your skills. It's like one of my favorite Abraham Lincoln quotes was, someone asked him about chopping down a tree. I don't know what the context was. He says, well, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend 4 of those hours sharpening the axe. So, which means that he would be consistently sharpening his axe after so many swings. Like he would swing the axe, 5 times, and then he would take a minute to sharpen the axe. Then he would swing 5 times, and he would sharpen. So it breaks down into, for the 6 hours he had, he would be spending 4 of those hours sharpening the axe to be more effective. So I think that that's kind of what we're looking for in this idea of having an unbeatable mindset. Is this we're looking for tools and ways to sharpen our tools. We're looking for shortcuts in some ways, so that we can acquire the knowledge, gain the experience, and we can be more effective in what we're doing. And obviously, practice makes perfect, or practice makes progress. So the idea of just actively applying what we're learning. I believe in many ways, I learned this a long time ago, that when you're learning something, when you learn something, learn it as if you're going to teach it. So whenever I would, read a book, or whenever I would, because there was a time in my life where I was teaching, I was learning something, but I was literally learning what I'm learning, then trying to understand it. Then I'm immediately putting it into a process that I can teach, I can show, I can share. That was super helpful for me. And then setting goals and reflecting on the progress. Again, setting goals, chart your course, big goals beyond what you are capable of doing. That's what a goal is. A goal is something right now you are not achieving or hitting that goal. It has to be beyond your capabilities. That's why it's got to be a stretch goal. And your goals got to be clear. And maybe in a future video, I'll talk about, because the goals have to be sincere. They've got to be congruent. I mean, you can't have a goal that you don't really, truly, deeply believe in. And it's got to be congruent to who you are. But the point is that when you set your goals, they've got to be big. They've got to be bigger than what you currently can do. And then when you reflect on your goals, you're providing that time for, if it's journaling or if it's just reflection. It doesn't have to be both, but it can be one or the other. And you're looking at what's working well, what's not working well, what you need to adjust, because it's all about adapting and making those adjustments and changing, because no one's going to get it right the first time. No one. Overcoming obstacles, which we talked a little bit about in the previous video, but the idea of when you embrace those challenges and you make those adjustments, you go around it, you go above it, you go beside it, to the left, to the right, you go under it, you go through it. But the whole idea is that you're dedicating time to learn. And that's what they say to AI, because AI can do things, and especially quantum computing. Quantum computing doesn't look at this as like, ones and zeros. It looks at them all at the same time, which is kind of scary and fascinating all together. So AI on a quantum computer, it's like, what does that mean? So when we overcome our obstacles, we face our fears. Like I shared the quote from Alex Hanold. We face our fears because our goals demand it. And we constantly learn and grow because our goals demand it. And we're continuously learning and growing because our goals demand it, because we want to have an unbeatable mindset. So this idea of continuous learning, it is a lifelong journey. It's not a destination. There'll be times when we feel overwhelmed and discouraged. And there are times when you're not in a season of growth or expansion. That's okay. You're still learning, you're still growing, but you're probably more applying what you already know. You don't have to be listening to 2 books a week, or even a book a week. Maybe it's a book every 2 months. But the point is that you're incorporating new information, new strategies to maintain this curiosity and this growth orientation in your mindset. Because by doing so, it can unlock an immense potential in all of us. And it's not about just surviving, it's about thriving. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves. So that's what I mean when I say, how do I create an unbeatable mindset? It's by being committed to learning and growing continuously. So let's look at what the homework is for today. So we spark our curiosity. Let's pull this up here. Think about a topic you've always been curious about, but haven't had a chance to explore. It could be anything from learning a new language to understanding a new technology. Choose your path. Identify 2 ways you can learn more about this topic. You pick whichever one. Set some SMART goals, and we all know what those are. Schedule a time. Block out the dedicated time to learn what you're wanting to learn, and then the reflection part's really important because that's really when, in many ways, we learn to apply what we've learned. After a week of pursuing your learning goal, reflect on your progress. Did you encounter any challenges? Is your chosen learning method effective? Like, is the podcast effective? I mean, for some podcasts, it just drives me nuts, all the advertisements. So that's one of the reasons why it's hard for me to get through some of these, because it's like, I don't want to hear another stinking advertisement about, whatever it is. What was the one? It's the one that kind of summarizes books. Anyway, it's just like, I mean, I've heard that. It's just like almost hear it in my sleep. So you make adjustments to your plan as needed to ensure continued engagement. And then this one can be helpful. You find someone that wants to learn that same thing with you, and you kind of do it together. So that's it. This idea of being continuously committed to learning and growing is how we actually obtain what I call an unbeatable mindset. And successful people, they're committed to learning and growing. And I think the secret to this, again, in my opinion, the secret is curiosity, which we'll talk more about in our next video. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.